everyone, and welcome back to those who have joined me in the past. For those who are new, welcome. Today's video is actually going to be a little bit different than what I normally do. Usually I show people around my village. I recently took the move from New York to a small farm in Bulgaria. Today's video, however, I'm going to be showing you guys the traditional Rose Festival, and I'm doing that in honor of the fact that it's actually coming up pretty soon on June 3rd this year, and we're all very excited. Some of you may already know, but for those who don't, Bulgaria is very famous for our Damask roses. It's pretty much what we're most famous for. And what's special about our roses is that they are the most fragrant roses in the world. Believe it or not, even if you don't know, you've probably encountered Bulgarian rose oil before because it's used in a lot of high-end cosmetics, perfumes, and so on. So next time you spray that bottle of perfume or put on that face cream, feel special, guys, because 1 ounce of rose oil is actually made out of over 1 million rose petals that are picked by hand. And just to put it into perspective, for those of you who think in milliliters, it takes about 50,000 rose petals or 1,500 rose flowers to make just 1 milliliter of rose oil. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I was just mind blown when I heard this. And the best part is, it is pure magic. It's so healthy for you, for your skin, for your body. We'll talk about more in the video, but for now, let's just dive right in. Welcome everybody, and let's go to this festival. First thing to note is the rose that you see here, the yellow one, the traditional rose that we're used to seeing, whether it's red or yellow. This is not the Rosa Damascena. The Bulgarian rose is what you see now, this very pink and ruffly type of flower. And what makes this rose so special again is the aroma. It's much stronger and it lasts much longer than the traditional rose that we're used to. Additionally, it has over 280 components thanks to the special climate and soil that it's grown in. It's very high in antioxidants, so ladies, you probably have heard it's great for your skin. And it also has antibacterial and antimicrobial properties, so it's great for acne-prone skin as well. Like I said, magic. But I think we all know everything comes with a catch, so the picking process is very difficult to obtain this magic. People have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and picking goes from 4 to about 10 because in the afternoon, the roses actually have 50% less rose concentrate. So not an easy process. This is part of why it's so expensive. And expensive it is. Fun fact, it's valued higher than gold. Okay, now let's get into the festival. I'll give you more facts along the way, but to talk about what you're seeing here, the first stop in the Rose Festival is to go to the Rose Damascena field. So these are actual fields of real people. We go there and you're encouraged to pick the roses, which you can later take home, dry, and make into whatever you like. Pretty passionate on cosmetics, so I've personally made it into facial toners, which I have to say, it's my secret recipe. Who needs La Mer when you have this? Now, what you're seeing here are called Kukieri. You probably saw them a little bit earlier in the video. They are present at most Bulgarian holidays. They're really mainly around January, but they're so popular in Bulgaria that they show up in most of our holidays. What you see now are traditional Bulgarian Nosії, the girls that are throwing the rose petals. Here are a few more Kukieri. I'm going to make separate videos just on Kukieri because they're so exciting. Now I'm going to give you the chance to hear the chlopki or bells for yourself because I find them so enchanting. Let's see what you think. What do you guys think? Enchanting, scary, annoying? For me, they're enchanting, but it could just be because it's in my blood. I'd love to hear what you think, actually. What you see now and what you heard right after the Kukieri was the dance of the roses. You can still see them dancing here. The girls are picking the roses. The boys are going and collecting them. And the music you heard is very, very, very traditional Bulgarian music. You'll hear that all across Bulgaria all the time. A lot more happens during this part of the celebration, including the crowning of the Rose Queen, but for time's sake, I'm going to move on because I really think this festival just gets better and better as the day goes on, and I want you guys to be able to see everything. So next stop, of course, is going through a street fair sort of thing where you can buy homemade goods, but I mean really homemade goods, including rose products. What you saw a few seconds ago was rose jam, rose honey, absolutely delicious. Next stop, we take a tour around the town of Karlovo, which I'm not sure if you noticed all the mountains around, but it's one of the most beautiful towns in Bulgaria, in my opinion. Heading over to a real old Bulgarian hanche. Han means inn, I would say. This is where the Bulgarians would get together, have a drink, and it's always made amazingly because you have the interior courtyard, kind of like what you see in Roman villas, and then you have rooms on the top, on the second floor, as well as the first. So it's an inn. You know, you go drink and then you have a room to sleep. What more can you want? What you saw them giving away just a second ago was Bulgarian rose rakia. Rakia is our national alcoholic drink, as well as rose water, which yes, it's drinkable and very healthy if it's 100% pure rose water. Don't try drinking anything that has any other components inside. It has to be 100% pure rose water. And I'll show a bit more about how rose water is distilled a bit later. What you're seeing here is a continuation of huro. If you ever come to Bulgaria, you'll see huro is everywhere and anywhere you have a happy Bulgarian. So anytime there's a party, there's going to be a full night or a full day of huro. You can see now that this is where people would sleep. This is the second floor and you have the rooms in the back. So while we're touring this, I'll give you some more information about the picking of the rose. Doing so, I hope to give you guys at least a little bit of a picture of the value of the rose oil and why it's so expensive. So rose picking, like we said, starts 4 in the morning. Part of the reason for this is because we don't want the dew to evaporate from the roses because they start losing some of their valuable components. For this reason, willow branch baskets are used because they do not absorb the dew as quickly as other materials. Again, we just want the dew to keep all of the components of the rose. Each region has their own time period for when roses should be picked, but for a general rule of thumb, think early May to late June. There's even a proper way to pick roses, believe it or not. You have to use your thumb, index, and middle finger. That's tricky to teach over the phone. If you guys ever come to Bulgaria, I'll teach you. Speaking of technique, just take a look at this. Unfortunately, I can't teach you much in this category. I do so, but nothing close to this. I just thought it was something very cool to show you. Fun side fact, my great-grandmother actually did this for a living. She used to sew. She's not with us anymore to teach me or to teach you anything, but just thought of her. Now let's take a look at how that rose water is made. If you guys didn't know already, you can actually make homemade rose water. You just put the petals in just about enough water to cover them and let them simmer until the rose petals lose their color. Now, what this man is doing here is a little bit different. He's distilling, but you can do this at home to an extent if you like. You will get a pretty good result. Rose water is very healthy to drink. You can drink about a sip a day, and it's very good for digestion. It's also just good for your general stomach functions, not to mention for your skin and just about your overall health. It's also often used in baking and candy. We use it in Bulgarian Turkish delight, which we call lukum. Really good. Now, next stop on our tour, we're going to be visiting a traditional Bulgarian home where rose water was actually created. Rose water, rose oil. Personally, touring houses has always been my favorite part of any tour because I love looking how people used to live back in the day. So I'll share with you what I know. Back in the day, people would live all together in one house. So one family shares one house. When a newlywed couple would come along, they would come and the older people would either move downstairs or even in another room if you don't have that much space. There's the newlywed couple right there. Fun fact, a lot of Bulgarians still live like that. That's actually how I choose to live right now. I don't want to separate from my family, as crazy as it sounds. People in this house did make their livelihood off of rose petals and rose oil, rose water. So what you saw there was a little example of how they would distill to make rose water. We are going to see a little bit more of that later, but you may be wondering where rose Damascena actually came from. I have a feeling that you are already onto it just by the name. Damascena, Damask. So I think you can put two and two together. Damask is in modern day Iran. So these roses actually date back to ancient Persia. It's a very long and confusing history, but Bulgarians did originate from mid-Asia. So they would travel through Persia over to modern-day Bulgaria. It's a whole nother video I'd have to make on the history of Bulgaria, but that's just a general idea. And the double distillation method, so the method that we use today, invented in Bulgaria, is created in the 17th century. So you can kind of get a pretty good idea of the ancient nature of these roses, as well as the rose distillation, the rose oil itself. Let's get back into the festival for now, because I think you can see we've entered a whole new zone. Where we are right now is actually Damascena itself. The area in Bulgaria is called Damascena, and the reason being, this is where the mass production of rose oil and rose products occurs. Now, they made it into something of a museum. I think they did an amazing job, because you can go there, you can see the gardens, you can see how the rose water and rose oil is created, and it really just looks like heaven on earth. I think you can kind of get somewhat of a picture over the phone. In person, it's a whole nother story. Alongside just roses, they've also done a great job at depicting old traditional Bulgarian life, which you'll see right now. So these are just some of the day-to-day items that people would have back in the day. Again, one of my favorite things to see, you know me with my old-time stuff. This is actually really funny to me now, because a lot of what you see here we actually have on my farm, so it doesn't even feel like a museum to me anymore. It just feels like day-to-day things. We don't really use a lot of these things anymore, but I definitely have them on display and try to use whatever I can as much as possible. And here we have the famous rose amphitheater. There are, I don't know how many types of roses, but a huge amount of roses, and there are actually concerts and operas that take place on that stage. As hard as I try, one thing I can't do is share with you the aroma of this entire valley. So I'll just share a famous quote from an old Parisian explorer. It goes, "Kazanluk is the Kashmir of Eastern Europe." That's the best I can sum it up, as well as sharing that this is also Bulgaria's Valley of the Kings. So the same you have in Egypt, the Valley of the Kings, this is where Thracian kings and queens chose to bury their dead. I don't think you can get any stronger than that, really. I think that pretty much summarizes the magic of this land. Okay, so you're probably looking at this and wondering, what is this? This is not a rose. This is an ostrich egg, an ostrich and emu egg, and I know it's not directly related to roses, but it was one of the highlights of our trip, and I really wanted to share it with you guys because it was just so cool. There is an ostrich farm in the valley where you can go and have ostrich egg crème brûlée. I have no words to describe this experience. It felt like a fairy tale. You have the green grass, you're eating the ostrich crème brûlée. It was just something that I had never experienced before. Oh, and ostrich in Bulgarian is called, ready for it, Strauss. Isn't that the funniest name or the funniest word you've heard? Strauss. The next stop on our tour was to visit the birth home of Vasil Levski. Now, Vasil Levski is Bulgaria's biggest national hero. He is one of Bulgaria's, if not Bulgaria's biggest revolutionary, and he's known as the Apostle of Freedom because during Turkish occupation, he fought for our freedom and he was killed for it. The reason he's in this tour is because he was born right here in this valley of the roses in Karlovo. This church is very famous and holy in Bulgaria because Vasil Levski was made a deacon monk here when he was about 20 years old. And that's what you saw depicted in the mural just a few seconds before. 4 years later, in 1862, he left the religious world of monkhood and traveled to Belgrade, Serbia, where he became inspired by Georgi Rakovski, who was attempting to put together the first Bulgarian legion. This was a military unit of Bulgarian revolutionaries whose goal it was to overthrow the Ottoman occupation. Now, the history here gets very heavy and very deep, and I just won't be able to do it justice in this video. I'll make a separate one just on this because it's a very big topic in Bulgaria, and Vasil Levski again is our national hero. But here we're touring his birth home, which again is right here in this valley. Very tragically, he was hanged at just 35, but his mission was succeeded in the end, and his memory definitely lives on. You can see him right here memorialized in his hometown. Amazingly enough, we have another great mind born right here in the Valley of the Roses. His name is Ivan Vazov. He is Bulgaria's most famous poet, and he was born in a neighboring town or village, you could say back then, called Sopot. Ivan Vazov writes about the Bulgarian Renaissance as well as post-liberation after we were freed from Ottoman occupation. What you're seeing right here is the home of Ivan Vazov. He is born a wealthy son of a merchant. You can see it depicted in his home, really. And what's very famous, I could say, about his house is that little stream that you see running through. Again, these great heroes deserve videos of their own, which I'll do in the future. But for now, I'll give you a fun fact about Bulgaria that not many people know about. Bulgaria was actually one of the first, if not even the first country in Europe to have the Renaissance hit. Problem was, we were soon occupied by the Ottoman Empire, who destroyed all of our castles. And that's why when you go to Bulgaria now, there is no sign of a Renaissance period. It's very sad and something that we all regret. Very happily, Ivan Vazov lived a relatively long life. He lived to 71. I mean, I still think that's pretty young, but definitely not 35. And to summarize him up in just a few words, he is considered to be the patriarch of Bulgarian literature. What do you guys think about this rug? I'm filming it because I absolutely love it. I've been looking for one just like it for our home. Curious what you guys think. And that pretty much sums up the holiday Festival of the Roses in Bulgaria. I'm really excited that you guys joined it with me. I hope you guys loved it as much as I do. What you see here are a few of our own roses grown in our backyard. Those are some fresh strawberries that we just picked. And this is us picking the rose petals. That you see there is called kupariva, which I'm not thistle, I think you call it in English. It burns your skin when you touch it. And what we're gonna do with these rose petals is we dry them and we make them into tea. A lot of people make them into honey, into jam, but I like to make cosmetics primarily. I actually started bringing them over to the US to some of my friends. They love them so much that they had me start selling them on Etsy. I didn't think anyone would be in the slightest bit interested, only because I didn't think anyone knew about rose oil. It turned out people actually love it, and it was exciting to see that apparently people do know about Bulgaria and about Bulgarian products. So just something really fun. And the craziest part is people are buying mostly the rose jam, which I didn't expect. I thought that they would buy the rose perfumes, but they're buying the rose jam. I didn't think that people outside of Bulgaria would like that taste, but they do. Anyway, that's a little bit off topic. I just started sharing with you guys randomly. Thank you again so much for watching, and I hope to see you at our next adventure.